Hi, this is former Pro Bowl center for the Buffalo Bills, Eric Wood, and you're listening to Nate and the Fellas on the Circling the Wagons podcast. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Go Bills.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo! Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo!
The Bills make me wanna shout!
Welcome to the Circling the Wagons podcast, a podcast discussing the Bills all year round with interviews, news, recaps, and insightful fan discussion. Most times. Here's your host and lifelong Bills fan, Nate.
The Buffalo Bills lose an incredible, heartbreaking loss in Philadelphia against the Eagles, 37-34 in overtime on a walk-off Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown to put the Bills 6-6 going into the bye week and put some more questions in the air. So we're going to discuss everything and anything having to do with this Bills game. We're going to talk about the stats. We're going to talk about the penalties or the ridiculousness of the refereeing and penalties in this game. We're going to vent about some of the game itself, some of the coaching decisions, the players, whatever you want to get into. We're going to discuss it on this episode of Circling the Wagons, a Buffalo Bills fan podcast. But first, this episode is brought to you by the Twin Spires Sportsbook at Del Lago. If you're in the Western New York or Central New York area, head on down to the Del Lago Resort and Casino. Check out the sportsbook there. It is a great time. Waterloo, New York. So, John, I'll start with you. Just a heartbreaking loss. I just tweeted out that it was... This season in general feels like the Murphy's Law of seasons for the Bills season. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And I put when the game was even going into overtime, I said, how confident are you in this game going into overtime? I only put like a 5-minute limit on this, tweet because I knew that, if I did a whole hour, people would be like, I'm not very confident after the Bills loss or whatever. So 5-minute limit, and 74% of the people were like not confident at all. And those 74% of the people were absolutely right. It was a tough one. It was a tough one. And we talked about, outlook into the rest of the season on a previous podcast, just going into the season like, hey, the rest of it, like, hey, whatever happens. Like, I won't expect playoffs, but if the Bills make the playoffs, I'll be super excited for it, but I don't know, just another heartbreaking loss. John, your thoughts on the way that this ended and where you're at right now?
I think I've already said all that I've had to say to this point.
All right, Mike. Mike.
Instant classic for me, man. What a game. I would say the Eagles, in my book, are the best team in the NFL, and to play them, that could be a preview of the Super Bowl. To play them to the last play is awesome. Oh my gosh, incredible. Maybe it's time for you to liquidate that 401k you've been sitting on, dripping in every bi-weekly, and put some money on the Billies to win the Super Bowl.
I would not recommend that. Please don't do that, just in case. But yeah, the odds are great. Just don't liquidate your 401k.
Maybe it's finally happened to
Throw in a
us.
5 spot, not your 5.
When Bitcoin crashes, you buy. When stock market goes down, you buy. When the real estate market crashes, you buy. Same thing with the Bills. Never had better odds now, and they can play with anybody, man. And we said like last week they can drop 2. And what games would you pick for them to drop?
This one.
This would be the top one for me. So like nothing's changed in my book except holy crap, they can play amazing 2 weeks after a brand new offensive coordinator.
Yeah. So big picture wise, if you're not in the moment, really upset about this loss. Big picture wise, like the offense looks good. What would you pin this loss on, Mike, if you're looking for some sort of, maybe not scapegoat, but just like some area where, man, if this goes differently, the Bills win this one, and we're not talking about
I wish one thing that irks me, like obviously the officiating was horrific from the Bills side. The horse collar got turned into grounding. Ridiculous. Yeah. I didn't love McDermott ending the game, wasting a timeout to try and ice the kicker at all. Like, save that timeout. You still have the Bills have lost playoff games in 13 seconds, and you had double that amount of time. to get in field goal range. We know Allen can extend the play, like 1 or 2 passes. He got Bass for a shot. So I really did not like the willingness of the Bills to play for overtime when there was time on the clock. I understand Eagles have a good defensive line. You're worried about the strip sack, whatever. Like in that moment, going to overtime felt like defeatist to me when you had all those timeouts. And then for McDermott to burn one there, it changed the dynamic completely. To then it's like, okay, now I can kind of forgive you for kneeling the clock out. But that irked me.
Well, they still could have gone for it. Like you said, I mean, all they needed was a field goal. So they need what? Like 2 plays to score a field goal, just like the Chiefs did. So 2 timeouts does it, right? Right? 1 big play, timeout, and second big play, timeout, and you make a field goal.
But he was playing like that field goal was the last play in regulation, which I didn't agree with.
Which it's like, if you look at it from a standpoint of what's easier for you to do, try to get a field goal with no time left, or to go into overtime, hope that you get the ball, take the ball down the field from the 25-yard line down to, whatever next. I guess I see there's a sort of a conservative nature there by McDermott, but when the Chiefs did it, they had to do it, right? Like they were down by 3. They had to go, in 13 seconds and get a field goal. Right, like they weren't just playing with this amazing sense of urgency, like we hoped McDermott would have. But at the same time, I definitely see that. I think the horrendous officiating is probably one of the biggest storylines in this game. With Mike, you mentioned the non call for the horse collar tackle, which was right in front of the referee. Like the referee could almost reach out and touch Hassan Reddick's jersey. I mean, Allen's jersey was ripped after that, like it was ridiculous.
I've never seen that.
I've never seen such a blatant horse collar tackle where they just like, well, what else do you expect him to do? Right? Like
that was an incredibly athletic play by Allen. Like he's horizontal with the ground, like to get rid of that ball. And then was it to Diggs that was
I don't know.
Right
they
there?
Never showed, like Romo kept saying there's a guy like only a few yards away, but they didn't show a good replay of it, in my opinion, to show that. But I mean, I trust Romo. I mean, Romo says it's right there, right? So yeah.
Yeah, but it seemed like they would call the most obscure ticky-tacky like holding calls on the Bills.
Did you see that one where like the defensive tackle fell down and the Bills player kind of like pushed him down to keep him down, right? Like you don't want him. Like what are you supposed to do? Just like put your hands up and
springs back up.
Let him get right back up. That's only fair. It's only fair. He loses his footing. You got to give him equal chance to get right back up, right? There was the non-pass interference call on Diggs in overtime. Luckily, that didn't end up killing them because they still went down the field. But like that play was really rough to see. There's a couple of pass interference plays on Diggs, I feel. There's a really big one on Sherfield where the guy was tackling him and holding his arms at his side so that he couldn't even catch the ball on third down, which that would have been probably a catch, and if at bare minimum should have been a first down with 15 yards, right? Like there's a play where I don't know if you guys saw it. I tried to retweet it where Josh Allen ran in for that touchdown. I believe it was to take the lead, and like Diggs gets blindsided in the end zone by a defensive back. That one was circulating around, like just right in front of the referee, like again. And yeah, there were some. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were some plays, and it was like so much the other way where the Bills were getting called on everything. And to me, it's like if you're going to call that game, that's fine. Like if you're going to call everything, that's fine. But call everything on both sides. Don't just say we're just going to call everything on the Bills. But like half of those plays, like half those penalties probably were like decent penalties, like the offsides or whatever, like false starts. But some of those were just, you can't call that one unless you know for sure, right? Like even that AJ Brown fumble that didn't end up being a fumble on the last drive, like that looked like it could have been a fumble. And they're just like, no. I don't even know if they reviewed it, to be honest. They're just like, nope. So the calls, the non-calls by the officiating crew, we were saying this. I don't think it'll get into the edit, but John was saying that this is the worst game that since what, John? You said it perfectly earlier, that this officiating wise, we can't not talk about that. It's the worst game since. It's usually when he's ready to say something at that point.
What were you saying?
John, you were saying this was the worst game since the what was it, the 0-2 Patriots game or something?
It was like 99, 2000. When they ran in the 2-point conversion because they didn't stay on the field because of all the BS calls that led up to that.
Like the pass interference calls in the end zone and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just yeah. So it was just as bad as the just give it to him game. And then also, if Gabe Davis looks the right way on that one pass from Josh Allen, he has a step on the defensive back. He scores a touchdown. The Bills don't even. It was just rough from that standpoint of just, man, they keep you in it. The Bills keep you in it just enough.
I mean, it was by far and away his best game since
Gabe Davis. Yeah.
Yeah, and he still managed to cost us the game.
He looked amazing, and he still killed us. For sure, by far his best game of the entire season, and it's just the one play, and he just looks like. You see, like Diggs talking to him on the sidelines. He's like, "Bro, what was going on? Like, what was?" He's like, "Oh, I just."
What were you thinking?
Oh, I just. It's and I would say that might have been Allen's fault, but at the same time, this isn't the first time Gabe Davis has done this. Either run the wrong route or turn the wrong way. Like it seems like this. It doesn't seem like hardly any other receivers have this issue except for Gabe Davis, right? Like you rarely see Stephon Diggs run the wrong route, right? Like it feels like it's at least once per game with Gabe Davis. He's just like, what? So surprised they didn't try to call intentional grounding on Josh Allen on that one, but just because they've done it in the past. But anyway, Mike, you said this perfectly last week on the podcast, which I have to gravitate towards now because the Bills didn't win this game and they were so close, is that you were like, okay, the Bills can lose 2 more games. You said this last week. The Bills can lose 2 more games, right? So they can go 1-2 against the Chiefs and Eagles, and then they go 1-4 against the Cowboys. Who is it? The Cowboys, the Patriots, the Dolphins, and the
Chargers, Patriots, Dolphins,
and that still holds true. So if you're looking on the bright side of everything, right? Like you want to keep.
Maybe they'll win one more game.
You think they'll only win one more game, John? I think worst case scenario they go 8-9, which means they would only win 2 more games. Worst case scenario 8-9. I think there's no way that they don't. Did you say don't win another game or win only one more game?
I gave them 1.
Okay, all right. I say they win at least 2 more, probably more like 3 more.
I figured they'd fall into a game where they would win.
No, this was. I was thinking about it like this could be potentially someday like a Super Bowl game, right? Like the Bills, you have a really good, one of the best NFC teams out there, right? Like there's only 2 or 3 good NFC teams, so it's not that difficult to picture who the Bills would play in the Super Bowl. And it would be the Eagles. And I was thinking the whole time, I'm like, man, what a disappointing game this would be if Sean Hockley, son of Ed Hockley, was officiating that Super Bowl like he was today and gave that terrible of a performance and just like thinking that the Bills got screwed out of the game.
At this rate, by the time the Bills make the Super Bowl, it'll be his great-great-great-grandson.
I think eventually, wouldn't they move to like refs computer?
Please, yeah.
Like
AI?
to make it less subjective. Yeah. Something's got to become subjective when the technology is there.
They have those General Dynamics like those soldiers that just like walk like people, but they kind of look like people, like the bare bones, and like they can like jump over things. And have you ever seen those soldiers? Like they show that go on social media, and you're like, at first you're like,
is that a dream you had? They have soldiers already?
You've never seen them?
I just thought
the
they
dogs.
had dogs.
Yeah, well, the dogs were the first step. The dogs are the first step.
Oh.
Now it's like people who like they've shown them with guns. They've shown these robots with guns, like automatic, like handgun. At first you're just like, that's cool. And then the second thing you're thinking is like, holy shit, that's scary. Like to think of, right? Like they show like a guy maybe trying to go after it. And then the robot either like disarms him or whatever, right? And shoots him with blanks. Chokes him out. No, I'm just kidding. That's just a step away. But yeah, they need those guys on the field that just like, how is this not AI driven yet? Like, how is there so much human error involved into this, this sort of officiating. Like, it's ridiculous. Doesn't it ever make you think too? Like, this is the conspiracy theory Nate portion of the podcast, but like, gambling is the biggest it's ever been, and it's finally legalized, right? So, like, there was always a possibility of referees or whatever being persuaded by the mob, or bad bets gone wrong, right? Like, they're going to lose their house or something, and they have to, make a deal with a bookie, right? Like, there's always that possibility before, but now.
But bro, you don't.
You don't think so?
This is a complete tangent I just thought of. We got to come back to that. But how low in your esteem has the mob fallen? Like, in terms of savviness, right? Morality aside. But to find out that it was Rudy Giuliani who took down the mob.
That he was the one?
Like,
of
oh
all
my
people?
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. What an idiot.
Dude, at the time, I was just like, wow, like, Giuliani knows his stuff. And then the more he's in the news the last, 8 years or whatever, you're just like, what a bumbling moron. How the hell did that guy get anything done? How'd that guy how did he not get disbarred? Yeah.
Remember that press conference at the Four Seasons Landscaping? It's next to a crematorium and a sex shop. It's like, once you pull up and you realize it, why would you still go through with it? Oh, man. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
What an odd place to meet for a formal press conference. The Four Seasons. No, it's the landscaping company. Oh, do you hold all of your press conferences at, certain small private businesses? Yeah. But yeah, don't you think like there's a possibility that refs could easily be influenced by outside sources? Let's say I have no. Let me hold on. I'm going to Google, what does an NFL ref make? Guess how much an NFL ref makes. If you had to guess. John, I'll let you guess first.
Is this per game or annually?
So they work per time.
Correct.
How many games? So like 17.
Do they all work 17 games or?
I think you make more, obviously. I'm just saying, like, not the ones that officiate the Super Bowl. Like the average.
Okay.
If you do a Super Bowl, it's probably another like 15, 20 grand or something like that.
40K.
A year?
I'm gonna go 40K in $1.
It's still.
And my real guess is 100 and.
You're like, oh yeah, at 15K. I'm like, all right, so I'll go. I'll go on the low side.
No, I meant 15K plus for the Super Bowl. So like, it's about $250,000 a year. So think about that. Like,
so there's no excuse.
Well, like if they're making, not that like it wouldn't matter. They could be making $5 million and still have a gambling thing, right? But if you put $50,000 on a game and you affect the outcome of it, you could double your money within one game, or have a nephew do it, or a distant cousin put in the. I'm just saying.
So like what I'm saying is they're replaceable. Like if they make $250,000 a year,
you think they're replaceable because they make too much? Or because somebody would pay them a lot less money.
Yeah, because somebody else could just move right in and be like, oh, I could do that for $250,000.
And so if they're not good enough, they get like, it feels like doesn't it?
You can only have so many, right? It's like just like anything else with the league. You can have so many quarterbacks, so many whatever, so many refs. If you're not good enough, then they can find somebody that is. If you're making that much money.
There's a part-time gig, even.
Yeah. I had no idea.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be the best gig ever? You literally start working in August, and then you go to like January. That's if you don't do playoffs or the Super Bowl. That's not a bad gig. $250,000. I'd do it. You obviously don't have to be good at it. You don't have to be 100% accurate. Like that would be my big issue. Would be like, oh man, I hope I really get it right. But then at the end of the day, it's just like, if you're not sure, don't call it. Like, unless you're 100% sure that that's the penalty, don't freaking blow your whistle. Don't even bother. Wait till you know for sure, Anyway, that was tough. I'm going to go into stats of the game real quick because I don't want to be too depressed into this. Josh Allen for the Buffalo Bills, 29 for 51, 339 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. We didn't mention that 1 interception. I mean, that we were talking about like game-killing mistakes, and that one interception that Josh threw right into Darius Slay's hands. I mean, that was a killer. I mean, it was like, what, at their own 20-yard line, led right to a touchdown. That was just rough, unfortunately. Still, though, like, honestly, so real quick, guys, both John and Mike, I mean, this Josh Allen that you have right now, the way he's played the last 2 games, like, you would take this still, even though he made that one interception, and supposedly based on the stats of the game, he was like his 8th straight game with an interception, which I don't care about. It's like, whatever. You know, like he throws interceptions, but he also has amazing plays too. So I'm willing to take the good with the bad. Do you like this version of Josh Allen much better than the version that we had up until 2 games ago? Like, is it even a contest? John, I'll start with you.
I love Josh Allen.
So you love this version of Josh Allen, though, the last 2 games, right? Mike? It's not even close.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Just want to make sure it wasn't just me. But then again, the Bills had 505 yards of total offense. The Eagles only had 378. Guess how many yards of penalties the Bills had? Quick guess. Don't think about it. Just say one. Mike.
100.
John.
1,000.
Less than 1,000. Mike is closer. It's 80. 80. I thought it felt like it was going to be like in the triple digits. I had this feeling. Triple digits, but it was not. Josh Allen was also the leading rusher for the Bills today. 9 attempts, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dude, Josh Allen, if you were to look at Josh Allen versus Jalen Hurts side by side in today's game, because Jalen Hurts right now, I believe, is the leading MVP candidate. If you were to look at both of them side by side, and I like to take the bias out of everything, completely non-biased, even though I'm a huge Bills fan. We have a Bills podcast, completely non-biased. Josh Allen should be an MVP candidate over Jalen Hurts, right? Like, is he even close?
Well, I think his ceiling is higher, I would argue, but consistency is not there.
But he only had one. He had the same amount of turnovers that Jalen Hurts had.
I mean, for the season, right?
Okay. For the season, yeah. I mean, Josh Allen plays like this every game. The Bills go to the Super Bowl and he wins MVP, right? Obviously, they usually win that game, but the referees aren't, mobbed up or whatever. that it helps, but
I don't like MVP because it's turned into the best quarterback, and even then, it's not the most valuable quarterback for the team either necessarily. Like, you could make an argument for Mahomes, like who do you? I mean, outside of Kelsey, he's got nothing, but he makes it work. And Allen, outside of Diggs, he's got nothing, he makes it work. I mean, Hurts has got lots of weapons.
He's got amazing weapons, amazing offensive line, amazing weapons. Yeah,
but even then, it's come down to the best quarterback, and there's lots of other players, and so I just don't like MVPs and all those different awards because they put too much emphasis on the skill positions and fantasy football and all that. So it's not. I don't think it's true indicator. Same thing with the Pro Bowl. Like, there's fan voting and this and that.
Yeah, that needs to be run by AI as well. The Pro Bowl voting, MVP voting, everything. Josh Allen, like I said, leading rusher. James Cook, Captain Cook, the next leading rusher after that. 16 carries for 43 yards. There were points where he was really moving the ball well, and then there were points where he just couldn't get anything going. Latavius Murray, 9 carries for 30 yards. Ty Johnson, I thought, looked good again. 6 carries for 19 yards. I like this. Like, Sean McDermott always talked about having a well-balanced team. Like, I think this is what he wanted the whole time, because this was a good running the ball team, and this was a good passing team by the Buffalo Bills, by their offense. Gabe Davis, leading receiver for the Buffalo Bills, 6 receptions on, guess how many targets? If you had to guess real quick. 6 out of what? How many did he actually get thrown to? 7? More? 10. That's a good guess. John, more or less?
9.5.
He had 12 targets, so Mike wins that one. 12. Lots of targets for Gabe Davis today. Stephon Diggs, 6 receptions on 11 targets for 74 yards and a touchdown. Gabe Davis had a touchdown also. James Cook, 3rd leading receiver, 6 receptions on 7 targets for 57 yards. That one target he did not catch was the most important one in the game. Khalil Shakir, 3 receptions on 5 targets for 47 yards. Dalton Kincaid, 5 for 6, 38 yards, and some other people. Doesn't really matter. Leading receiver so this is the Eagles real quick. Jalen Hurts, 18 for 31, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Swift, 14 carries for 80 yards. Jalen Hurts, the 2nd leading rusher, 14 carries for 65 yards, 2 touchdowns. Leading receiver for the Eagles, Devonta Smith, 7 receptions on 8 targets for 106 yards and a touchdown. A.J. Brown had 5 receptions on 9 targets for 37 yards and a touchdown. That Zacchaeus guy, dude, like what? Remember that Next Gen Stats catch a few weeks ago against the Broncos where Cortland Sutton caught it in the end zone and it was like the most unlikely touchdown catch since like Next Gen Stats started covering that stuff since 2018 or whatever. Like that Zacchaeus touchdown catch where Hurts just lobs it up and Hyde, for whatever reason, wasn't ready at all for that one. Like that's got to be up there too, right? That was crazy. Again, another example of the Bills beating themselves and making big mistakes enough to let the other team in it, and the other team just gets, for all intents and purposes, the ball bounces their way.
What'd you think of Eagles' final drive? The fumble that wasn't
the A.J. Brown catch,
receiver catch. Yeah,
they said he needed 3 steps. I don't get that.
And they were talking about time, like all these different things I've never even heard about being in consideration. It's like you make a football move, guy.
He caught it. He tucked it. He was about to run with it. And they're like, no.
Took a couple steps.
It was weird. It seemed like the first time through it was incomplete. But like the way they were talking about it afterwards is like, well, if that was a sideline catch and he caught it with 2 feet, then they would have ruled it a catch. Then like it was a little confusing.
Yeah, that's the thing that gets me is it's like if he had made that catch and went out of bounds and it had been knocked out by somebody else, it wouldn't have counted as an incomplete pass. It would have just been a fumble or whatever. It wouldn't have mattered because it got knocked out. I don't get that. He had the ball. He had it firmly in his hands. 1, 2, and then it got knocked out, right? Like, how is that? How many more steps does he need to take? Does he need to juke a defender before it becomes, a fumble? Or what else does he possibly have to do? He wasn't. I can understand if he was bobbling it the whole time and then it gets knocked out on his second or third step. I get that, right? But he firmly had it. He caught it, was carrying it. Football move, which to me is like catching it and bringing it down, right? It was like, and for what they should have done is called that a fumble and then had it have to be overturned, right? Like they did that earlier in the game. They called it a fumble and then they make it get overturned based on the review. I don't think, did they even do a review for that one? I know McDermott called the timeout. I don't think they did a review, did they?
No, and McDermott had a wasted timeout to give them extra time to think about it because in overtime it's all through the booth.
It's all through the booth, and
so he's like, "Oh, I'm going to call a timeout so they can look at it again." Like he shouldn't have to do that.
No, it should have been. It should have been stopped, right? Like the booth upstairs should have been like, "We're reviewing this just to double check," because they didn't blow the whistle either. Like they let that play out to see who was going to end up with the ball, and then they're just like, no, incomplete. Yeah. Sean Hockley over there.
Well, it's rigged anyway, so it doesn't fucking matter.
You guys got to follow Warren Sharp on Twitter. He's like, he hates Sean Hockley, which is, I believe it's Ed Hockley's son or nephew or whatever, which Ed Hockley was such a douche also. Like it was all about him. It's like he would find the tightest shirts remember he would do that to like his last game called, and it was just all about him. Like, it's like, this isn't about you, guy. Like, this is about the way that he calls. I don't know. It was interesting. You got to follow Warren Sharp to see his string of tweets. Like, he does this constantly. It's really good. But yeah, Mike, what did you think? Same thing, right? Like, I feel like if you had to, we're the most non-biased Bills podcast out there, right? I think we can safely say that. Definitely. Like, if anything, we probably overcompensate. Like, yeah. Like, try to find things wrong with the Bills and, most other podcasts. So, in saying that, I still feel like if I were to make a blank call, if I'm the one watching it, it's like, that should have been a fumble, in my opinion. Mike?
Yes.
Okay. I don't even know if we want to do a Gettys. Do you want to do a Sweet Sassy Molassy play the game?
I want to talk about Von Miller, where he's completely, if you're not ready, don't play because you're taking up a spot that someone is. Just looks completely ineffective and completely lost.
He does. He looks like a shell of himself, doesn't he?
That's insulting to a shell.
He's what's worse than a shell of himself? An like a worn out like snake skin of himself.
A husk?
A husk of himself. Like, have you ever like drawn something in chalk on the sidewalk and then it rains right after, but you can still kind of tell that there was at one point some chalk on the sidewalk. Like it wasn't a torrential downpour, but there was enough rain. Like that's Von Miller this season. What a waste. Hold on. I'm gonna want to see Von Miller's stat lines for this season because
Well, unless there's a stat line for like running 10 yards deeper than the quarterback and getting completely lost, you're not going to see any stats.
Yeah. Dude, every time he's in there, I'm like, why isn't AJ Epinesa or Greg Rousseau or Leonard Floyd on the field? Because they did it was Leonard Floyd had the tip pass in the air and Terrell Bernard intercepted. I'm like, thank God Floyd was in there instead of Von Miller. Like Von Miller was in the last drive. And I'm like, why? Why would you put Von Miller on the field? What a waste. And then it was like they had a 5-man rush. So they had like AJ Epinesa on one side, Von Miller on one side, and then they had Floyd, Greg Rousseau, and Ed Oliver. And I was just like, okay, I guess. But it's like you're just wasting space by having him out there. Like I was watching him on purpose because you know how we just said we're the most like nonpartisan, non-biased Bills podcast. I'm like, maybe because we always rag on him every week. It feels like I'm watching him. I'm like, maybe I'm not giving him enough of a chance. I'm going to watch him specifically during the live play when he's out there to see if he's really making a difference. And he made absolutely no difference at all today. It felt like there was times where he would just like try the rush, his first rush move. If it did not work immediately, he just kind of stood there and kind of like went back, right? Like just stands there. What the? You didn't even jump up to try to bat the ball down or whatever. Like, it's a waste. It's a void in the field, right? Like we could have traded Von Miller this season and kept, who do we trade away? Boogie Basham? Kept him. He would be making more of an impact right now than Von Miller by far. Like it's not even close. And I get it. And we're not trying to say that he shouldn't be on the field because he's injured. That's fine to be injured. No one expects you to be superhuman and come back. That's fine.
Yeah.
You don't get more than 5 or 10 snaps a game, though. I'm sorry. This is not the time for you to ramp up your play and get ready for the season. Like, you better do that in practice or, like, with very, very limited snaps during the game, right? What is the coaching staff looking at?
Or by yourself at home.
Yeah. In your own time, man. So... yeah, I retweeted this one thing where this guy's like, Von, what are you doing? And he highlighted him. You'll have to check it out on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I did do a poll on Twitter/X. I said, what do people call it? And 96% of people say Twitter still. So I'm going with Twitter from now on. So we will eventually go to Twitter for some hot takes, of course. But yeah, Von Miller. Would you if you were to give a wall of shame for today's game, would you give it to Von Miller just for being on the field? He'd be up there, right? He'd be like an honorable mention.
I would give it to the refs in the NFL.
The refs in the NFL. That's a good one. I would give it to Tyler Bass / special teams because of the blocked field goal that would have won the game. The blocked field goal or the missed field goal or James Cook for missing that catch that would have won them the game. There was like 4 or 5 pretty bad drops.
There, why don't you pick one? If you could pick one. You're naming a lot of things. Pick one thing.
The refs, for sure. I mean, more so than anything.
Exactly.
Number one.
It's fucking rigged.
It's rigged. I can't disagree. It feels that way. It felt like the refs were like, whoa, the Bills are doing a little too good today. They're playing a little bit better than we thought that they would. Like, you got to stop this. Like, this seems like they might. The Bills would have been up by 20 at halftime if it wasn't for the refs. I'm fully convinced of that. Like, they stopped calling as many penalties in the second half on the Bills, but by then the damage was done, right? They were only up by 10 or 3 by halftime. Like, it was a little too late at that point. Let's see. At halftime it was 17-7. So they should have been up 27-7.
You know that a play that stuck out for me was on, I think it was Allen's first touchdown run with Osiris Torrance trailing the play. I think Allen would have stood up at the goal line, but it was really cool to see a lineman get all the way downfield like that.
Yeah, definitely. That was a really good play, Mike. And heads up play by the rookie. Osiris the Virus. What do you like? Do you like that one better or Cyborg? That was his nickname in college, Cyborg.
I like rhymes.
You like rhymes, yeah. If it's not alliteration, it's got to be a rhyme. Captain Cook. That's alliteration and multiple meanings, right? Osiris the Virus, rhyming it. 3rd and goal. Neither.
And
No,
Con Air.
Con Air. Yep. Well, that's what I always think of, right? Was it Cyrus the virus in Con Air or Osiris? It was Cyrus, right? Okay.
Cyrus.
But Osiris is even better than I kind of think. But was he? Which character was he? It wasn't Nicolas Cage. It was John Malkovich.
Malkovich.
Okay. That was a really good play.
How about Trent Sherfield? It's like he and Allen just like met each other.
When he gets on the field, they have no chemistry whatsoever.
Yeah.
If you were to go by chemistry on the field, like Sherfield and Hardy have no chemistry with Josh Allen. Whereas Shakir seems like he has really good chemistry with Josh Allen, more so than even, I would say he's either second or third on the team behind Diggs and maybe Kincaid, chemistry wise. Whereas Sherfield and even Davis is so hit and miss. Sometimes it's they could score 4 touchdowns together, and sometimes it's Davis just doesn't even get in the stat sheet, So Sweet Sassy Molassie play of the game. The play that I'm going to give, which is kind of what I thought the Gettysburg of the game was going to be where that second quarter play, like I mentioned, where Leonard Floyd tipped the ball up and Bernard got the interception. And then Allen, they went from being down 7-3 to going up 10-7 because Allen had that 9-yard run. And I believe, was that the run that Osiris the Virus pushed him in on? I think it might have been. I can't remember. But he had 2 9-yard runs. It might have been the first one. It might have been the second one that Torrance was part of. So what about, do you have anyone on your wall of fame? It's got to be Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen put the team on his back. John, if you had to give the wall of fame to somebody, if you had to?
For me, I'm going to say it's McDermott because it's not quite statistically significant, I wouldn't say. It's possible the Bills just lose close games randomly, but they're due a lot of wins in overtime games to even things out. You're 0-6 under McDermott, I think now, right?
I believe that's what. Yeah. So you
and looking at one-score games, terrible.
So you put that on McDermott then. So wall of shame then for McDermott specifically. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when does it come? Because I was getting and I'm going to read these hot takes soon when we get into it, but
because he's not playing to win at the end, not being nearly aggressive enough. We talked about it going into the half. He's got timeouts and he wastes them, not thinking through that he's got a gunslinger in Allen, could easily get a 30-yard pass, 2 20-yard passes to try for the long field goal to end the game. Mm-hmm. And then in overtime, it's first and goal from the 10?
Yeah.
Even at the end of the first.
And then it seems like we always need the defense. It comes on, we just need one more stop. Yeah. And we never get it. We just need this one thing. We should be up by 14, but we just need this one more stop.
And that wasn't going to happen in this game because the Eagles had already figured out how to do it by that point, by the second half. They already figured us out. So we're going to stop them again. And to your point, at the end of the first half, there was 20 seconds left, and we had Josh Allen and a one timeout, and we knelt on it immediately. Why not try for a couple?
And we should have had more timeouts directly because of McDermott.
Even with that, why not try for a couple of passes and a timeout and a field goal at the end of the first half? Let's just kneel on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. What a lot of people after this game, and we'll get into hot takes where I think a lot of people are going to use it as their hot take, is McDermott needs to go. And I'm kind of a McDermott apologist in the fact that I guess maybe it's sentimental in the fact that he ended the drought. And I think he always, most of the time, these games are always competitive. The Bills are always in the games. There's very few times where you're the Bills don't have a shot to win this one. It seems like against the best teams in the NFL, they always have a shot.
You know what? It wouldn't be as big of a deal if they had beaten the Broncos or the Buccaneers and the Jets week 1 and maybe one of the other teams. At this point, they should have had a lot more wins. So now it's a lot more significant when they lose, even if it's at a high caliber team.
And I agree with you, but the way that the Bills are losing these games, I guess I just can't put it all on McDermott. It's just with
no. That's the reason why you have to put it on McDermott. He's 0-6 in overtime games with the Bills. Look at the epic failures in the playoffs when they've advanced and how they've done. The year that they were supposed to win the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, the epic collapse. I'm not saying like fire McDermott immediately, but you got to put some blame on him.
Yes. Okay. For that, I 100%. He definitely needs to be blamed for this loss, but not the main reason why they lost this one, right?
Oh,
like,
the refs, it's rigged. The NFL rigged it. So, like, no, for sure, not this particular game. But if you look at an overall sample size, it's not great, right? Like with the talent that they've had, they should have done better.
Like it comes down to inches, right? And I feel like with McDermott, there's definitely been a lack of them this last season. But like at the same time, like the season before that, they went 13-3. The season before that, they went 12-4 or 11-6 or whatever. Like they're always competitive, and I think that like I just can't blame him for. He was a part of this loss, but it's like, well, he's not the one who told Josh Allen to throw it. You know, he's not the one that like knocked the ball out of James Cook's hand when he was like he could have walked into the end zone. He didn't tell Gabriel Davis to look the wrong way in the end zone. Like I know people think that that's all coaching, and I agree, I guess to a point it is. But at the same time, like these guys are grown men. Like they just make mistakes. Like there was a lot of mistakes, like a blocked field goal. Like why wasn't the guy blocking him well enough or whatever? Like
part of coaching is discipline, and that's mistakes. You know, there were some penalties that weren't on the refs, believe it or not, that
belonged.
That you know, early in the game that shouldn't have happened. And miscues, like that's coaching, and that's from the top down. So you have to take that into account.
You do. I know I see enough of those things where I'm just like, you know, Josh shouldn't have done this or so-and-so shouldn't have done that. Like I just have a hard time placing that on Dorsey along with the penalties. Like it'd be one thing if the Bills got blown out and then the penalties were what kept them from making it a good game. But like literally the penalties, I mean, what is he supposed to do? I mean, there's a horse collar on your quarterback right in front of like the referee, right in front of like two referees, and it wasn't called. Like, what can he do for that? You know, like what?
Not only wasn't called, but they called intentional grounding because he got whipped around and the ball came out of his hand. Come on.
I know. It was a minus 30-yard play, right? Like, it should have been plus 15. Instead, it was a minus 15 or a 10 and the down, lost a down. Absolute worst case scenario. It's ridiculous. I showed that tweet on Twitter, showed that image. I said, this was a penalty on Buffalo. Like, it's insane. Like, if you were to show somebody who hadn't watched the game at all, be like, this was a penalty on the Bills. Josh Allen getting horse collar tackled ended up being a penalty for Buffalo. That's absolutely insane. I was surprised when they started calling penalties against the Eagles, like those false start penalties on Jason Kelce. I'm just like, I can't believe this is even happening. I don't know if this is a makeup call or what, but so John, you were saying, you know, the thing about McDermott, like they should have played so much tighter on that last drive on defense than they did. Like they allowed that first down when it was like 3rd and 6 or something, right? And Romo said it on the broadcast. Romo's like, you should be so on top of these guys that not playing to not lose by a touchdown, which is what exactly happened, but like not to play to like let them get a first down, right? Like you want them to try to kick the field goal, right? Or to try to kick the field goal and try to make a 52-yard field goal. That's what you want. You don't want them to like not score a touchdown.
You want the field goal to be worst case scenario.
The field goal to be worst case scenario.
Not you don't want the touchdown.
No. It's like worst case scenario obviously is a touchdown, but that's what they were thinking. That's the way they were playing. It was like it wasn't quite prevent. It wasn't as bad as a Leslie Frazier defense where the guys would be like 10 yards off on a 3rd and 6, right? It wasn't that bad. Give McDermott credit. He does not do that, but they're still 3 or 4 yards off. So like all the guys had to do was like, you know, run a decent route and then just fall forward a couple of yards and it was a first down. So yeah. But then there were also some good plays where like Ed Oliver was ready for like that Jalen Hurts run up the middle. Like that was an amazing play on defense. Again, I can't really get in the fault the defense. The defense is down so many guys and their safeties are old. They're so old. Hyde and Poyer, they're just... It's going to be an interesting offseason to talk about like players to replace players that aren't coming back, like what they need to do to bring this team to the next level. But
can't wait.
So do you guys want to hear some hot takes?
Not really, but go ahead because I know you're going to do it anyway.
All right, here we go. All All right, after this, and since Mike said I have to do it from now on, I'm going to like every tweet that I come across, even if I don't read them on the podcast, because he made me feel guilty about it. So after I said the Bills lose 37-34 in OT against the Eagles, what are your hot takes in this loss, Bills Mafia? McDermott and Davis need to go. Okay. That was looks like the most liked reply. I agree with Davis. I'm okay with Davis leaving. I like him. I don't love him. I can't even say that like keeping him, like even trying to keep him on a vet minimum deal. Mike, you were talking about that last week. Vet minimum deal. Keep Gabe Davis or let him walk. You know you won't get him for like less than probably $10 million a year. Would you keep him? I mean, would you keep him for the vet minimum, which is like
I'm drafting
a receiver? Mike's team draft a receiver. I'm with you, Mike. AJ Tharp writes, officiating will continue to receive no announced penalties, fines for violations, while players will be fined thousands for dumb errors that the general public don't agree with. NFL officiating is making this game unfun to watch. Can I ask a dumb question? It's like, why don't they just have more officials? Like, if they can't catch everything and there's not enough of them to go around, just add another official or two, right? Like this seems like
they have the booth, right? Why can't they just overrule everything? Why can't they be like, nope, you're wrong. We're gonna call it from up here. Yeah. So make this call.
Hey, where were those refs in all black that ran on the field against the Bills in the Texans game? Where were they in this game? They should have run on the field after that horse collar tackle.
Yeah, that game was rigged too.
It was. NFL officiating is making this game unfun to watch. You know what's funny is I'll always bitch and complain about the officiating on Twitter, and then people will like reply back or like quote tweet it with like at NFL officiating, like their official Twitter. It's like, do you really think they're reading this? Do you think the at NFL officiating like official Twitter feed is just like, whoa, Bills fans are pissed. I guess we better start calling a better game from now on. I think I like the intent there. I just don't think it matters whatsoever. Bartman writes, McDermott will be forever a bridesmaid, never the bride, been a defender for too long. Emily says this loss isn't on Josh. No, definitely not on Josh. British Bill Dog writes, McDermott wouldn't have been calling soft zone / prevent defense in overtime if Cook hadn't dropped that touchdown. The intentional grounding was called a horse collar. Bass hadn't shit the same pants twice, and we were up 20 points when Philly had the ball inside the last 2 minutes. Dude, Tyler Bass this season, you know, we did our mid-year awards. We basically was like most surprising, you know, in a good way, and then most disappointing. Dude, Tyler Bass is creeping his way up there for me on the entire season. Most disappointing performance. Like, he's up there, especially when we need him to be his best. He is not. Especially when you see the other team kick a 59-yard field goal to stay in the game, and your guy misses a 48-yarder. It's just rough, man. Big Mike writes, at least with a bye week, Bills Mafia can go a little while without such heartbreak. Yeah, we can't lose next week. Yasinator writes, I'm pissed off. That's my hot take. How many times do we let Josh down in these situations when he plays an incredible game? Justin Goddard writes, this one sucks real bad in the context of the season overall, but it's the best we've looked all year. Yeah, I'm still convinced this season is just a Murphy's Law season. Like, it's just everything that can go wrong for the Bills has gone wrong. Blake Boriicki writes, the refs did worse than any player on the Bills. Yep. White Henry says, now Brady is him. You mean Joe Brady? Because we only call him Joe Brady on the podcast. This is not to confuse him with any other Brady who shall remain unnamed. Thomas Durlack, most poorly officiated game ever. 4 for 4 writes, Andy Reid would never kneel with 20 seconds and a timeout in a must-win game. Playing to not lose is simply clutching defeat from the jaws of victory. So I agree with the second part of that take, but the first part is like, Andy Reid would never do this. Like, I was texting you guys, and I think I retweeted on Twitter, Andy Reid, when I think the Chiefs were down 14-7 against the Eagles, he punted from their own 37-yard line, right? Like, he has Patrick Mahomes. He should trust Patrick Mahomes with the ball. And like, it was like a 4th and 5, 4th and 7 or something like that. Like, he shouldn't have punted there. He should have gone for it, right? Like, you have, even Andy Reid does that. So Andy Reid isn't this like golden god of aggressiveness just because he's very conservative sometimes too. Joe Torello writes, kickers never miss field goals. BS Bills. Oh, field goals. He must be meaning like against the Bills, versus the Bills. And when they do, we have 12 men on the field, 59 yards in the rain. Brutal. What was most annoying about that field goal was that he kicked that in such a way that he curled it into the uprights. Because when he started to curl, you're like, he's going to miss this one. The Bills won. And then he like curled it at the last minute. Just right. Friends on the Bridge writes that our defense is really good until it's not. Also, let's start focusing the conversation on next year's draft. Sit Josh and put him in mothballs until next season. A bad injury now keeps him out half of next year at this point. Yeah, good point. I don't think they'll do that they won't do it no matter what, but Big R writes, Josh's interception was more of a backbreaker than poor reffing. I think they're both terrible, to be honest. Charles Byrne says he shows the pass interference call where the ball's in the air and the guy's literally pulling on Stephon Diggs' jersey, which I've retweeted too. So check that out. John Donahue writes, McDermott almost always chokes in close games. Yeah, this is an issue. Tom Zebold writes, hot take and same old take, same old Bills. Just Say No to Turf writes, screwed over by the refs multiple times, screwed over by McDermott, hated the kneel with 20 seconds. The NFL hates us and wants to kill me. Plus, can the real Von Miller please come back? No, he's not going to come back. He's just going to keep taking precious reps away from the guys that are healthy and doing really well this season. Northside Tommy writes, who now thinks we can beat KC, Dallas, LA, or Miami? Ugly. Lisa says not going to be in playoffs and once again find a way to lose. I'm still a Bills fan, just disappointed and sad. I'm not sure of McDermott's ability to have them prepared. We seriously have lost every way you can. Now they can play spoiler. So how far do you guys think that Sean McDermott has to go before you even consider firing him? Like, if they miss the playoffs this season, which we think is definitely a possibility. Here, I'm going to go check out the Bills playoff odds, especially with everything that went on today. At 6-6, the Bills are the 10th seed in the playoffs. Still, the Bills almost have to win out at this point. Every loss, this is from Pro Football Focus or Pro Football Network. ESPN's Pro Power Football Power Index still gives the Bills a 36.9% chance of making the playoffs before Week 12. By no means is Buffalo done, but the odds are against him right now. All right. What has to happen for McDermott to get fired? I feel like we talk about this every week, but thank you guys, everyone, by the way, for sharing your thoughts on Twitter for your hot takes. Appreciate that for sure. Do you think there will ever be a time when Bean is just like, I could see him looking at this season as like a wash with the injuries, but every week we get away from that and they continue to lose. It's got me thinking more and more that like, I don't think he's going to be in the hot seat, but like, I think Bean's going to start thinking about it next season, depending on how the Bills do next season, right?
I agree. If it happens next season as well, then yeah.
Because if you think about like the coaching gaffes that he just keeps running into, if you put the defense, like let's say you have an offensive coordinator like Joe Brady or someone that's just halfway decent to get a good output from Josh Allen, do you need the best defensive coordinator as long as you can have a guy that can coach you to winning these close games, right? Like, what good is having a great defensive coordinator when you can't seem to stop them in the final moments? Besides that Giants game, really. They're 2-6 now in the season when the game has been decided by a score or less. They're 2-6. Like, that's pretty crappy.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. Like McDermott's a great defense coordinator, but he's not gonna. If they get a new coach, they're not gonna get as good of a coordinator as McDermott is.
Exactly. Do you have faith in Bean finding a replacement for McDermott if he had to? That's something I never really thought of because he would have to do that. If they got rid of McDermott, they would have to find someone out there that would, it feels like Bean knows what the culture needs to be and the sort of thing he's trying to build, right? So
yeah, I like Bean a lot still. I still like McDermott, but not, it's been tough. Like, we can blame the refs for this game, but there's been a lot of games, like every other game. This has happened other years as well, where every other game they're winning, losing, winning, losing, winning, losing. And this has happened a few years ago too. And you can't sustain that.
No, I'm going to hold off on the fire McDermott talk for now, but it's just something we'll keep in the back of our pocket. Mike, do you have a joke of the week or something to cheer us up with before we go into the bye week or anything?
No.
What was your favorite meme from the Thanksgiving Day weekend? How was your guys' Thanksgiving? Was it good? Good Thanksgiving? John's like, who cares? Mike, how was your Thanksgiving?
Yeah, awesome. Good. You?
I want to tell you about my favorite meme from Thanksgiving that I saw on Instagram. Did you guys ever see Did you guys see Dolly Parton at the Dolphins or the Cowboys halftime game?
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys, John? Did you see Dolly Parton?
What's an Instagram?
So anyway, Dolly Parton is 77 right now, right? So she's basically like my parents' age, right? And I know she's 77. Her bones are still 77. Like everything, her kidney, her liver, like everything inside of her is 77. She has gotten so much work done. She does not look 77. Like we're now in our 40s. She looks younger than us. Like it's crazy, right? A lot of work done. So my favorite meme of the entire weekend was it was a video of this guy like kind of looking to the side like so people couldn't see what he was doing in like a basketball game, right? So but the caption was me trying to hide from my cousins at Thanksgiving dinner because I'm all bricked up from watching Dolly Parton at the halftime show at 77. Do you guys know what bricked up means?
Mm-hmm.
Mike does. Good. Mike also knows what mid means. This game was better than mid. It was a good game.
This was an instant classic.
How come those instant classics don't go our ways, though? To John's point about McDermott, when was the last time there was an instant classic? Everyone's like, the Chiefs game, instant classic. I'm like, yeah, but we fucking lost. So, like, it's not for us. The comeback game is the only game I can think of the Bills for an instant classic. Just comes to mind.
It's the only one. And now it's no longer the greatest comeback. So
that's right.
Whatever.
I mean, how many other teams have had their like signature win, like the Music City Miracle? Like that was 13 seconds. Like all these teams have these like the best games ever against in their history against us. Anyway, not trying to depress people.
Yeah. The Bills' biggest claim to fame is that like they play the Bills. Oh, let's fire their coach or let's bench their quarterback because they played the Bills and lost. That's our biggest claim to fame.
The team was so bad that they have to do something because they lost to the Bills.
Tim Boyle's starting for the Jets now because of the Bills.
So any final thoughts before we end this one, guys?
No.
Okay. Mike, you said instant classic. Anything you want to add to that or good? I didn't hear anything you said, Mike, and I wasn't taking my phone off mute because I couldn't. So I wasn't laughing at whatever you said.
And that's what's so important.
Amen. Amen to that. So thank you guys all for listening to this episode of Circling the Wagons, Buffalo Bills fan podcast. This episode is brought to you by the Twin Spires Sportsbook at the Delago Resort and Casino in Waterloo, New York. So thank you guys again all for listening. This was a rough one, but we're going to be able to talk to you guys in the bye week. Maybe we'll have some clarity, some more thoughts on the outlook of the Bills, maybe some thoughts on where we could go as a franchise. If for some reason we don't make the playoffs, which I still think is definitely in the cards, depending on how the game against the Chiefs go. And then again, even if they lost that one, you just win out, right? Like, so it's still possible. They're still in the hunt. And man, this is the season to do it too. Like there's no Burrow. There's no Deshaun Watson. The Steelers are so close to losing like the next 4 or 5 games. Like the Bills can easily, like the Texans lost today. Like the Bills just need to get into the playoffs. They just need to get into it. And they can be a real threat to any team, you know? That's the thing that stinks about all of this is just with these injuries, like the Bills could really be a good team, a really tough out in the playoffs, you know, like they could go in as a 7th seed and make it. All right, real quick, gonna do 2 winners for our contest. So if you leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts on the Circling the Wagons podcast feed, you will get a chance to win a shirt from our T Public store. So we have 2 winners this week. First one is Stu McAllister, and second winner is Joel Loves Bills. That's Joel Loves Bills. Thank you guys all for leaving the reviews and keep them coming. We definitely appreciate it. Helps us reach a few more listeners. So on that note, thank you guys all for listening. Again, signing off for John.
Sigh.
Us in your favorite podcast service. Email us at ctwpod@gmail.com. That's Charlie Tango Whiskey Pod @gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at CTWPod. And most importantly, go Bills!
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills, Nate.
Well, listen, the whole show is called Circling the Wagons. Say no more. I love it.
Don't you think it's kind of interesting, though, about, like, the depth or lack thereof of human emotion? Because, like, say you're at Thanksgiving and you burn the stuffing. Some people are like, oh, my God, that's the worst thing I asked for. They're like, you're going to be dead. Like when your parents die or your kid die or somebody, you don't get to be as old as you are without ever losing something, a pet or something, right? And, like, that's the worst you can feel. So that's like 100. It's like, how can the stuffing be above a 3? Like, how can that be at 80? Like, it's just curious.
How people are like that with.
Well, maybe they
just the narrowness.
They just
range.
lost one of those things, so the stuffing just amplifies it. They're like, oh, now this on top of that. Now I can't even.
But wouldn't that belie the idea that everyone gets so worked up every single week about football?
I would see it the other way, John. If like your pet just died and you went to Thanksgiving and someone ruined the stuffing, you're not like, well, this takes the cake. You're just like, well, I mean, it could always be worse. I've literally just went through worse, right? So,
or maybe it'd have to be the other way. The stuffing was bad, and then your pet.
Oh yeah, that would be the worst. It progressively gets worse. Yeah, you get an fender bender, and then you have a loved one pass away. You're like, what? Yeah.
But maybe some of it's temporal too. Like, you don't appreciate, like, when you remember when you got done with finals and you felt so amazing. Like, if you could bottle that, you would just feel grateful all the time that you didn't have to stay up all night and take a stressful test and
God, I wish.
Worry about your future.
I wish there was a way to bottle that up. Oh man.
I think I can put.
Yeah, and I just
feel like I can put sports in a vacuum. I can feel really terrible about the Bills all the time, but have that completely separate about how I feel about, like, oh, my kids are awesome and this and that and everything's great here. Like, I can separate the things. It's not like it makes everything bad.
I feel like you're one of the people that can't do that, though. It feels like you would let it.
Feels like you're gonna kill yourself.
I wasn't gonna say that, but I was gonna say like, because you wear your emotions on your sleeve when it comes to the Bills. How do you not let it affect the rest of your life? You can compartmentalize it because you are an amazing actor, my friend. Like,
couldn't you compartmentalize it when you're talking to us about it?
Yeah, you should practice.
Well, but the thing is, we're talking about it, right? Like, that's the whole point to this, right? Like, when I'm talking to my kids after, it's like, okay, we're talking about different things.
True.
They're 5 and 6 or 7.
God forbid they bring up the Bills though while you're talking to them. Oh, so that's it. You just wanted to bring that up with Daddy. Yeah.
No, but like, it's like an overall thing. It's different. It's obviously different. Like, sports is supposed to be like
Escape.
Yes,
a 3-hour.
It's supposed to be an escape from just like movies. Like, you go to the movie theater and you like popcorn, you sit down, and like you're just zoned out watching this thing for 3 hours. It's like an escape, just like you said. The only thing with sports is because you're invested and you have a home team, that it hurts when it doesn't go your way.
A movie, like the main character dies, you're like, meh. I wasn't really related to this person.
That's actually, it's the funny thing. That's what I hate about most movies is they have happy endings 99% of the time. Right? It's like, you could almost predict what's going to happen in the movie. But you get that rare movie where it's like, well, I didn't predict that. Oh, it's sad, but I didn't predict it. Like, I was not expecting that whatsoever. So that's a little bit different. I don't know where I was going originally.
My wife says that's the problem with, like, kids' TV shows that our kids watch, is that they always have, like, everything always comes around right for the character at the end of each show or movie, But like also shows, it's just like this person has a problem. How do they solve the problem? They solve the problem. Everything's fine. When in reality, like life isn't like that. Like there are a lot of things that you overcome, but like there's also some things where you don't get like finite closure on, right? Like, and we should also like teach kids or teach ourselves that like there are just some things where it's like it's not always going to end up with the hero winning or whatever. To your point, John, like that's you probably like that in part because that's not how life is. Like life doesn't always end up where, the hero gets the girl or the villain gets stopped or dies or whatever. Like there's a lot of times where the hero doesn't win and the villain does win,
Yeah, in that rare moment where like the movie's open-ended with no sequel or the bad guy wins, like that's unexpected. Like you can't necessarily predict that when you're watching it, and that can happen in real life. So like, why not have more of those things happen? Like, yeah, everybody loves a happy ending in a story and the emotions and everything. So that's why they keep trending out the same stuff over and over again. But it's not, it is kind of funny. We use sports as an escape, but we get so invested in those sports that it affects us a lot more, so much that it's not even an escape anymore, right?
Yeah, because it's like Mike always says, only 1 out of 32 teams wins the final championship, right? So more often than not,
it's all rigged anyway. But like, you get yourself so invested, and like it goes beyond that entertainment, where you're like, oh, you're going to the game, you're doing the tailgating, and you got all this stuff going on. You got all the memorabilia, you're doing collectibles, and you're so into it. You're doing podcasts, right?
Only if you're an idiot, yeah. But go on.
And then like they just let you down, and it's like, well, what was all that for?
What is all this for right now? Currently, as it is right now, what is all this for? Yeah.